the check-in. Thank you, George. Could you handle the check-in, George?
Yes, ma'am.
I'll start. I'm Teresa Elamine. I am the organizer for the Fannie Lou Hamer branch, which is based in Columbus, Georgia, in the US. I'm also one of the originators and organizers for the Black Liberation Caucus. And George and I co-convened the No NATO Working Group of the Disarm in Wars Committee of the US section. So George, if you could call on everyone else.
All righty, and please do a 30-second check-in with your name, branch, and any roles that you have. Teresa modeled it pretty perfectly. So we'll go for Shante and then Adrian.
Hey y'all, this is Shantae. I'm the lead organizer for WILF Atlanta, and I am not going to be able to stay on this meeting for long, so I'm just checking in.
Adrian, and then Shireen.
Hello, everybody. I'm Adrian Bernal. I'm with the Atlanta branch. I am a member of WILF and member of SARN and radio broadcaster, and with the Veterans for Peace and the School of the Americas Watch and SARN.
Great. Shireen and then Hala.
Thank you, George and Teresa, for organizing this meeting. I'm Shireen from Wolf, Lebanon. I've joined the section in 2003, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Great.
George, Hala is our speaker, so do not call on her. Do Mary White, Beatrice, and the other people.
Great. So we got Mary, Beatrice, and then Daryl.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mary White, and I'm from the Triangle branch. Good afternoon to you all.
Daryl, and then Mama Fatima.
Hi, how you all doing?
We're good. Daryl is about to introduce himself, and then you'll go, Mama Fatima.
Okay, no problem.
Hello, I am Daryl. I am in Washington, D.C., a part of the DMV branch. Great to have you all with us.
Your name and your branch and any role that you have, Mama Fatima. Please go.
Yes, I am Mama Fatima out of New Orleans. And we have a New Orleans branch of NCOBRA, but not of WILF. But I am a WILF member, and I hope we'll get a branch here soon. And I'm also on the National Advisory Board of the Elders Council for the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America. And I'm here to give a brief report.
Great to have you here. Great that you're a member and build that New Orleans branch. All right, we've now been joined by Shemaya Haynes. Shemaya, we want name, branch, and any role that you have in WILF.
Thank you for the acknowledgement, George. Shemaya Haynes. My mother happens to be Claudia, or Mama Fatima, as she likes to be called, but I just call her Mama. And I'm happy to be here today to support her and also the mission of this group. Thank you.
Great. I'll turn it over to you, Teresa, or possibly Daryl, to introduce our guests.
No, I'm introducing the guests, and Beatrice needs to introduce herself, George.
My apologies, Beatrice.
Okay, hello, thank you, George and Teresa. I'm Beatrice Schultes. I'm the president of the Costa Rican section. And if everything goes well, the alternate regional representatives in the new IB.
Great.
Well, that
Sorry for
sounds
my
kind of
faux pas.
funny.
Yeah, it is funny. Let's see what's happening, what happens.
Okay. Well, I'll introduce Hala. Hala Kalani is someone I met during the 33rd Triannual Congress of Wealth International. Hala has numerous movement building experiences throughout the region in support of the Palestinians. And she is, as far as I know, and hopefully still a member of the Lebanon section. So Hala is going to speak to us for 12 minutes about conditions in Lebanon and what people are doing to make a change. And we'll have open discussion for 15 minutes. So we'll definitely allow Shireen, who is the outgoing Middle East, North Africa regional rep for Wealth International. So George, if you could quickly put the agenda up on the screen so that everyone can see the agenda, because right now, for some reason, Mary White's picture was taking up the screen. So our meetings generally start around 4 every day. This meeting, after Hala and the discussion takes place, this meeting will be facilitated by Darryl Moak of the DC, Maryland, Virginia branch. So as you can see, we're at the point where Hala gets to speak.
Hala, when you've gone 10 minutes, I'll do the 2-minute warning. Sorry, Teresa, I can't see anybody, so I jumped in maybe at the wrong time. But I wanted you to know at 10 minutes, I'll give 2 fingers.
So after Hala speaks, we'll ask our Lebanon guests to go to bed, get some sleep, because it's after 11 p.m. in Lebanon. And then we'll do a consensus, which I expect to be approved, of the Palestine-Lebanon webinar we're organizing, where Hala is speaking. So now it's on you, Hala.
Thank you so much.
Take the agenda down, George, so we can see Hala. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Teresa. Thanks a lot for this opportunity, and thanks for everyone for being here and listening to the situation in Lebanon, which has been really heart-wrenching because it is really targeting, like it is falling on the hardest, on the most vulnerable and poor communities in the country who are now suffering. Can I have to share my screen? Can I have rights to share screen so that I can follow a presentation with you all?
Should be fine now.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Okay. So, you know, Lebanon has been facing compounding crises since a few years now, but I wanted to give you first a bit of context of why we are in this situation here in this small country of the Eastern Mediterranean. So basically, this is a country that has witnessed
happen when you actually don't let fear
crossing of many civilizations, you know, ancient civilizations, up to the point where, you know, the Ottoman Empire was dominating this region, and then the country fell into the hands of the French, which are famous colonizers. And it gained independence in 1943, but not really a full independence, because there was always that hegemony, and the situation remained very vulnerable after the French had left the country in very uncertain ways. It is surrounded by Syria from the north and the east, and Israel from the south. So we have very belligerent neighbors, as you can see. We are a small population of 4 to 6 million people, but we are really many religious sects, and this is a great source of diversity. But in fact, it is often used as an arm as a weapon against us, because foreign influencers, what they usually do is that they, reinforce one community over the other, and then civil wars spark. So it is affected by region international tensions a lot, this small country. So our first civil strife was in the 1860s between the Druze community and the Christian community in the mountains, because Lebanon was just a mountain before it became coastal land, was regrouped with the mountains to create what is today modern day Lebanon. So the French also left a lot of ambiguity in the governance and power structure, as I said, and we have now a confessional system. So, we have people who are chosen to the positions of power based on their confession. So that excludes an important section of society, and section of society that is able to contribute to the country with its talent rather than to which religion or sect it belongs. So as I said, it has been a playground for others' conflicts. It was part of all the wars that the Arabs had with Israel since the 1940s, when the British encouraged immigration to Palestine, and there was a lot of terror attacks against the indigenous Palestinians, and they started leaving to neighboring countries, and so Lebanon received a lot of Palestinian refugees who are still, by the way, stranded in camps, have less rights than other communities. And it has been also, there was the civil war from 1975 to 1990, where you had different fractions from different political parties that use sects and religions in order to rally people behind them. But in effect, they are just warring for power, and they're corrupt. The 1982, we witnessed the invasion of Lebanon by the Israelis, and we had the famous, I don't know if I'm sure you've heard of the Palestinian Sabra and Shatila camps massacre. So when the war ended, in fact, it did not lead to any reconciliation, or there wasn't accountability for those who killed and caused the war. The victims did not get any justice. So that kind of creates this situation where we still did not come to terms with that past. And on top of that, those same people who led that civil war and made us kill each other, they are now in political positions, and there are leaders. So we haven't really known peace, and we're always constantly vulnerable and exposed to Israeli aggression. Our airspace always violated. We had a massive war in 2006 that destroyed a lot of our infrastructure. We have constant operations. One of them was called Grapes of Wrath, where just 250 Lebanese were killed, and civilians who even took refuge in a UN compound died. And again, no accountability, no justice. And yeah, people are just constantly losing their lives senselessly. As well as, like, you know, in 2011, when the war broke in Syria, the small country received the highest number of displaced people per capita. So there's a huge strain on the limited resources we have here in Lebanon. We have conflicts between Syrian and Lebanese communities constantly. Right now, they are fighting with each other for food, for bread, which is becoming very scarce with the Ukrainian crisis. So we have been facing this economic and financial crisis, which came at the same time as the COVID-19, pandemic. And lastly, we had 2 years ago this explosion, which we are commemorating this Thursday on August 4. And as we speak, one of the silos, because it was a port explosion and it was at the site where we keep our grains, our wheat. And so that explosion, till today, we're feeling the pain, renewing the trauma, because these silos are now falling and creating a lot of pollution and health risks for people. So these parties that came to power, they established a failed system that nurtured corruption, sectarianism, clientelism, racism, and patriarchy. So they always reinforce each other and produce this unbearable environment that led to the collapse we're seeing today. So in 2019, people rose up to protest against the system. It was, very much a women-led movement. And you've seen a lot of footage of women, fighting back the repression, fighting back the patriarchal system. They've inspired the revolution, although, they are targeted by the injustices. They are disproportionately affected. And, these challenges are really making Lebanon's economy sink. And it's especially amplified for poor women and women in neglected regions, domestic workers. Sorry, I'm just trying to see my screen here. Sometimes I can't see it. That's why you see me jumping. And so domestic migrant workers as well are always targeted, sexual minorities, other marginalized groups. So women are discriminated against in the country's laws, economic practices, social and political norms, and they are fighting back. But we still have like the worst laws when it comes to women's rights. Although you hear about all these Arab countries that are repressive against women, but in fact, Lebanon, though you see women feel that they are living better lives, but in fact, there's a lot of discrimination in the laws and the patriarchy in the political system. So we have been facing this collapse, and just to give you a few numbers, so the debt to GDP reached 150%, the ratio, and it's also impacting environmental resources and public health. Food prices went up by 11 times. All of this really compounded the impacts of the pandemic, which the world felt. The Beirut explosion also had negative environmental health and impacts and added to the whirlwind the small country has been facing. It also destroyed, as you see here, the grain stocks were in those silos, which are now falling. And so with the continuous Syrian displacement, we were really crippled. And we have now another crisis with the Ukrainian war, because Lebanon imported 80% of its wheat from Ukraine. So we're now really facing food insecurity and shortages, and people are even falling victims of this crisis and dying because they're fighting with each other for bread. We're also living daily struggles.
You're
in
over time, Hala.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can stop here and finish with the questions and answers if you wish. I'm sorry.
Well, take down your screen share, Hala.
Oh, okay.
We have a very tight meeting agenda. And so allowing you 12 minutes was meant to allow a few minutes for discussion. But we really don't have that much time for discussion. So I would like to ask Shireen if she has anything to add. I'm particularly interested in the report about politics and women in the plea from the head of the Lebanon section that there needs to be reforms in the Lebanon parliament. So could you or Shireen speak to that?
Yeah, Hala, please go ahead.
Go ahead, Shireen, because you're more into the women's issue. I'm more into the crisis in general.
Yes, thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Hala. Actually, it was very touching even for me to listen to what Hala was saying. It's very hard to see that we never lived in peace, but still women are still struggling to have a position, to have a place. As you were saying, Teresa, women in the parliament and women in the political system are striving to have a place in the political system. Now we have 6 women out of the 208 parliamentarians, and one of them is our WILF member, Halima Qakour. We were able to win a seat in the parliament through Halima. Now we also had the opportunity through the Congress.
Have you lost Shireen?
You lost me?
Yeah, you were frozen for a moment. You were frozen.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, now we can.
Yeah. So there was a meeting now with the House of the Parliament, also talking about quotas with the Coalition of Women Network.
This is one of the issues. Go ahead.
Yeah. So this is one of the issues that we are working on in terms of the political participation. Just as Hala said, the political system excludes everybody from participation, and women is one of these groups. And women issues are also sidelined because it's the weakest thing that this political system, the undemocratic political system. Can you hear me?
Well, Hala, we should probably stop now.
Yeah.
And I will ask anyone if they have any burning questions before I explain about the webinar coming up in September. Anybody have any burning questions for Hala or Shireen? Because I can see the internet access in Lebanon is kind of shaky, Shireen. So you keep freezing up. Any burning questions from the BLC
Sheila
members?
Harper has her hand up.
Okay.
Real
Hi,
quickly,
everyone.
quickly.
Okay, yes, violence against women. I am concerned about that. Usually a lot of times in war-torn countries, that's what happens. Violence against women, meaning sexual assault and just general violence against women. Do you have any kind of report update on that? I'm sorry, I
Yeah,
missed it.
maybe we can share some of these UN women.
You froze again.
Women don't have, I will write.
Women don't have a right, meaning that you can't take it to court? Is that what you're saying? You don't
No,
have?
no, Sheila. Shireen is writing in the chat, which is good.
Okay, good.
So let me say this before we let Shireen and Hala go, because it's after 11:30 in Lebanon at night.
Oh,
And so we had planned to let them go right about now. But for everybody's information, we're planning an international webinar supported by the International Secretariat of WILF, based in Geneva, and they're gonna let us use their Zoom account. So we'll be able to get hundreds and hundreds of people in the webinar. The International Secretariat, Shireen and Beatrice, Jenny has agreed that once we settle on the date and the details, that the International Secretariat will notify all of the over 50 sections about the webinar. George and I are working with the Middle East Peace and Justice Action Committee, the committee that hosted you speaking, Shireen, some months ago. I think it was last year, actually. And Nada Parat is being asked to represent that committee as a person who is a member in the US, and she spends a lot of time in Lebanon. And then we have a person who visited Palestine recently, who will bring solidarity greetings from the Black Liberation Caucus. And then we have Hala is our kind of main speaker. We have 10 minutes or less assigned for everyone. So given your presentation and the screen sharing, Hala, we really want you to be able to do as much of that as possible. So if you could work on the timing so that you can maybe do a little less detail, but to make sure it fits into 10 minutes. So there's Hala, there's Hanan of Palestine who's being asked. There's Nada, who I think many of you know. There's Lucy Murphy, who will be representing the Black Liberation Caucus. And then there's Solfrid Rockness. Solfrid is a psychologist. You remember Shireen. Solfrid is a psychologist who has been working with adolescents who are refugees from Syria coming into Lebanon. So that's our powerful list of speakers for the webinar. And there are two dates we're looking at, September 12th or September 13th, which would be a Monday or a Tuesday. So I want to make sure, Hala, that you're still good for those dates because it's based on the availability of the speakers. We're waiting on an answer from Hanan and from Nada, but all the other speakers and moderators have been confirmed. So does that still work okay for you, Hala?
Yes, yes, yes.
Wonderful. Well, we're going to say goodnight to you, Shireen and Hala, while we continue on with our regular business meeting. Love you so much. I'll turn on my camera.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a good meeting. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Have a good meeting. Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So now we need to have approval of that webinar.
I'm sorry, I was just talking like crazy and I was muted. So does anyone have any questions about the webinar as I described it? Are there any objections to the Black Liberation Caucus co-sponsoring the webinar with the Middle East Peace and Justice Action Committee for those dates, September 12th and 13th?
No objection. I wondered if it's going to be one date or two, because Tuesday's better for me than Monday. But either way, I'll be attend.
Yeah, and we're trying to choose between those two dates based on the availability of the speakers.
Oh yeah, whatever happens, I'm good for it.
Great.
Thank you.
So we have consensus on the webinar. So it's official. We're going forward. So now we turn the meeting over to George to show the basis of political agreement, which is our standing agenda item. So the BOPA, George. What's happening, George? You know, we have a hard stop at 5:30. So let's move the agenda. George, explain what's going on. Read the whole BOPA.
Okay, so we founded in May of last year, and these are the fundamental agreements that we had of a caucus, that we make our decisions by consensus, as we just did, and 2 representatives of African descent from each branch, where possible, make up the steering committee, and we meet every month. We identified these areas of work and consensused on reparations, freeing all political prisoners, criminal justice reform, and mass incarceration, ending voter suppression, free Palestine solidarity, anti-racist transformation of WILF US, solidarity with other oppressed peoples of color, universal health care, Medicare for all, immigration justice. We discussed but did not consent on BIPOC women's reproductive health at one of our past meetings. And that shows our strategy team, myself, Teresa Elamine, Shante McLaughlin, and Daryl Moak.
Well, let me just add that the BIPOC women's reproductive health comes out of the overturning of Roe v. Wade, which is going to be especially detrimental to Black and Brown women. And so we had kind of discussed it and got partial agreement, but we didn't do the consensus process, which is, are there any objections? Are there any questions? Are there any blocking concerns? So now is your opportunity to speak. So if there are no objections, no blocking concerns, and no questions, then this item.
Mama Fatima raised her hand.
Okay, recognize her because I can't see anything because of the screen being covered.
Yeah, me too.
I have one question. I agree that the overturning of Roe versus Wade by the Supreme Court is an extremely bad move, because if they overturn that, they can overturn everything else and keep the chaos going. But the concern that I have about reproductive rights is not telling other people what to do, but I have some serious concerns about the fact that there is an element of people in this country, and they still have power, that are hiding behind the concept of reproductive rights to commit genocide, particularly against the larger African American population. and other so-called marginalized people. My concern is if we gonna do reproductive rights, let's do both sides of the story. And let's make sure that this issue is not used against marginalized people. In other words, what I'm saying is some elements of that movement are behaving as though wiping out the poor people and the minority, so-called minority group people is an answer and a solution. And we need to
Okay,
do more thinking.
okay. We do have a tight agenda and we do get your point. It's unfortunate that Sister Shante is not here because she did make that point about maternal health in terms of women getting what they need during their pregnancies, maternal child health, the death of women in childbirth is higher among women of color. So it's not just about the right to abortion, it's about the right to live through a pregnancy and to have healthy children. So please lower your hand, Sister Fatima, because the question becomes for you, are you objecting to adding BIPOC women's reproductive health now that you know that it's intended for everything?
No, I don't have any objection as long as both sides of the story are being told. That's fine.
Well, great. If there are no objections, then can we reach consensus by everybody turning on their camera and going thumbs up so that we kind of know all of the members of the caucus, thumbs up if you're for it. You, Sister Fatima, okay, she found a little reaction button. I was just doing it, thumbs up. So George, could you please take down the BOPA and put back up the agenda? Because this is the point where we turn it over to Darryl Moak because the DC, Maryland, Virginia branch is running the rest of the agenda. So George, could you please put the agenda up on the screen so we can see what's next?
I can see it, right? Okay, good.
Yeah, well, the BLC strategy chart review is actually next, George, which is also on you. In January of this year, we launched a 3-year campaign designed to bring in 300 new members to WILF from January of 2022 until December of 2024. It's actually tied to the last 3 years of the UN Decade for People of African Descent, which also ends on December 31st. And so we generally just take a look at we look at this at every monthly meeting. So George, are there any changes to it that you want to highlight?
The changes that we have is we added our European Descent Allies Caucus, and that is in this period that we're in now between July 2022 and June of 2023. Over under strategic objectives, I'm going to make it a little larger so you all can see. The allies, the European Descent Allies Caucus has members from the Northeast, Southeast, Southwest, Northwest, and Midwest. Ideally, 2. We have Robin Lloyd and Susan Smith from the Northeast, Samantha Turner is the Southeast person, Gloria McMillan is Southwest, Sue Hilton is Northwest, and Odile Huguenot Haber is Midwest. We also added a couple of activities for this upcoming period that covers from the year, the year that we're in now. And those activities are in September of this year, the Congressional Black Caucus convenes in DC. In October of this year, there will be the No to NATO International Webinar. In December of this year, there will be the Fannie Lou Hamer Branch Human Rights Conference.
Well, George, you really need to add the Palestine and Lebanon webinar, which is happening in September of this year.
Yes, I will add that.
So
Quick enough typists to do it now. I'll
no,
do it.
no, I'll do it later because we're really out of time.
Tight on time, yes.
So this is sent to everyone. So you'll get a copy of this in the email along with the recording of this meeting, as well as the chat from this meeting. Oh, Sister Rita Gonzalez is here. Oh, great, good to see you, Rita. So George on the check-in, who is here, who didn't get to check in yet, other than Rita?
Sheila Harper.
So your name, your branch, and where you're located.
Okay. Hi, my name is Sheila Harper. I am with the Philadelphia Wolf Branch. I am located in Germantown, Philadelphia. I have worked in health and human services all of my professional career, which spans around 40 years. I'm also a certified child behavior specialist, and I have a nonprofit, and the focus is violence against teenagers. And that's it, I guess. I don't know.
Thank you. Well, that's plenty. So Rita, could you do a quick introduction as well?
Sure. Rita Gonzalez, part of the Triad branch. And I'm in Trinity, North Carolina, which is halfway between Greensboro on one side and Winston-Salem on the other. And I'll be leaving Saturday, the August 13th, to head to Ensenada, Baja, Mexico. And Tracy,
yay.
Come, and you too, George.
Okay.
Well, we must talk before you go to Mexico, so call me.
Absolutely.
So George, what's the next item on the agenda?
Now it's time for the DMV to take it over.
Okay, Daryl, we won't have a whole 10 minutes. We need to cut it down to about 5 so people will have time for questions. So can you tell what's going on in the DMV branch?
Well, I'm pleased to announce that the DMV branch just got its relaunch in June, around Juneteenth weekend, when Wolf US was here during the Poor People's Campaign and program. And Teresa was here with us, as with George, and several members of the Wolf USA leadership, I'll put that in quotes, were here as well. And we were able to get a good, nice size room of about 40, I think 30 to 40 people were present. Not all of those people, as I said, some were from other places, but we're here to support. And we've got a reasonable number of people that were here from DC to explore and learn about Wolf, because many of us were not aware of the organization and what it does and how it fits into the activist work that many of us are already doing or have been doing or are interested in doing. One of the great pieces about this was that we had a significant number of those folks in the room that were younger people. And when I say younger, I mean under 50. And I just barely missed that, but believe it or not. And but we're very excited about the younger folks, men and women, but primarily a lot of young women were in the room and in the meeting We are still waiting on the numbers to come from the Wilf USA branch to tell us how many of those folks actually signed up to become members. We don't have all of that data just yet. And we are also reaching out to the people from the sign-in sheets to coordinate. Our primary organizer here in the DMV area, Lucy Murphy, was out of the country for a while in Palestine, and then getting back, has a few other things. She's working with some young people and a program today, which is why she's not here. So we have not yet had an official meeting with those folks that were interested or that came out to that event, but we are doing outreach to other people still to continue encouraging people. And in fact, I sent this invitation to a couple of folks in DC yesterday. I don't believe they were able to join us, but we are working on that. So there's not much more to report. We have yet to formalize much of anything beyond the fact that there's several of us purchased our membership and or pledged our support by taking out a membership, maybe a better way to say that. And several of those folks will be a part of this Black Liberation Caucus as well. So it's a threefer. We are building a branch, we are part of Wilf, and we are part of the Black Liberation Caucus as well. So lots of good work is coming, and I'll leave it there. If you have any questions, we'll do our best to answer them, but we may not have anything to say about the questions yet, and but we'll see. Maybe you have something that we can answer, but I'm happy to be a part of supporting Mama Teresa and all of the work that we're doing, and particularly in, I think that the key is connecting, especially folks of color in DC and in the DMV area, with this notion of peace and how that has reverberations in every area of our lives. As some of you may know, DC is the last continental colony that we have. We still have Puerto Rico and some other places that are colonized by the US as well. And so we are still fighting for statehood in DC and for recognition. We don't enjoy the same benefits that you all enjoy in your states and your areas. We basically have the same rights that Lebanese would have in the US. None. So, and no voice in Congress and no voice in the Senate. Although we do get the pleasure of voting for the president and for shadow representatives and shadow senators, and we have the right to vote for our own local government, but the Congress has the right to overturn anything that we do. So, as you can see, that's not quite tenable for a nation calling itself justice nation. So I'll leave it at that before I get on the soapbox about something else. And Teresa reminds me that we have a tight agenda, and that's not what we're here for. So there you go.
Well, let's do this, Daryl. The event at Sankofa Cafe on June 17th was sponsored by the Southern Anti-Racism Network. So we did pay for the refreshments and the printing of the programs and other things. The Southern Anti-Racism Network is the nonprofit that I started almost 25 years ago, and we made a commitment to build Wilf. And so starting all these branches in the South were really sponsored by the Southern Anti-Racism Network. And so I'm excited that the list of who all the members are in DC, Maryland, and Virginia will be forwarded to Lucy on Wednesday, the 3rd. So Daryl, be sure to get up with Lucy to see who is actually a member, because this is probably going to be one of the biggest branches in the country, because there were already more than 10 members already in DC. They just didn't have a branch. But now that you've rebuilt the branch, it's going to grow big, big, big. So Daryl,
Mama Teresa, believe me, I had talking about SARN was on the list in my list, and I forgot when I turned it over to you before I could say it. So thank you for saying it. But I did want to express thanks from those of us in DC for SARN helping to both. You all, Teresa says it lightly in terms of paying for a lot of food, because it wasn't just refreshments, it was food and the programs, but also helping with the coordination and organization of that meeting and pulling us all together. So there's a lot more involved in making this happen than she has let on. And so we are grateful for that leadership and that energy that she gave to us.
Okay,
and
Pastor
to
Pastor Darrell, you got about 30 minutes to run the rest of the agenda. And I think Next on the agenda may be the report from NCOBRA, but Daryl, it's in your hands to get us out of here by 5:30.
Yeah, so Mama Fatima Smith, Perry, you are on for 5 minutes regarding an update from the National Convention of NCOBRA.
Yes, we had our convention the weekend of June 25th. We elected new co-chairs. Kenneth Henry out of the, she's in Maryland, is our new female co-chair. We are presently male co-chaired by Willard Lett. Our organization is set up where the higher offices are run by a male and female jointly to try to keep down some of the sexism and the pushing women out who should be in leadership out. We also have new board members. One of the people that have been welcomed onto our board that are new is Robin Ruth Simmons. She was the councilwoman that was able to get some reparations for the people who were victimized with the property redlining in Evanston, Illinois, and also Mr. Greg Carr, who is head of the African American Studies Department at Howard University. So we also have continued to focus on the passage of HR 40, the African American Reparations Act, and SB 40, which was introduced by Cory Booker at the Senate level. HR 40 does have enough co-signers to be heard by Congress as of 2021. After 30 years of straight lobbying, year after year, it's now eligible to be looked at by Congress. But of course, you got the Ukraine crisis, the pandemic. They're putting everything in front of reparations. The concern that I have at this point is that now that it's become a reality, I see things going on in the media that are indicating, oh, we're taking care of this. Reparations is about repairing the damage against the whole 30-40 million of us. Making land deals and so forth and so on with people who file private complaints is okay, but that is not real reparations. That's a step toward reparations. Reparations means total repair. And one of the things that we did do at the convention was examine the 5 injury areas that we have listed, which is dealing with health, education, economics, wealth, and poverty, nationhood, which you have dealing with culture and the destruction of a whole people, as well as individual people, and of course, justice. So until all 5 of those areas are answered, we've got to keep pushing and not get comfortable. Also, NCOBRA is a Black self-determined organization, which means that we make the decisions. We'll work with allies, but not within NCOBRA. NCOBRA has to be a space where we, as the former descendants of African slaves, can kind of get in our own space, deal with our own diversity, and determine a direction, as opposed to allies or other people, no matter how well-intentioned they may or may not be, continuing to tell us what to do. So that's basically where things are. It would take a much more in-depth discussion to deal with this, to clarify things that need to be clarified, but I'll just end by saying that reparations has to be a people's process. And it cannot involve tokenism and just saying, oh, we'll throw a few crumbs here to a few people there, and we'll decide which ones are going to speak for people. That is a problem that's been in the past that would greatly harm our efforts toward getting a real peaceful solution to the race problem in this country. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that report and that great insight to the amazing work that NCOBRA is doing and has been doing for a very, very long time. Thank you for your dedication to that work as well. Mama Fatima, it is good to meet you face to face.
Thank you. It's good to meet you.
We're at least virtually face to face.
Yes.
When I make my way down to New Orleans soon, I'm gonna have to make it my business to meet you in person.
Okay.
And I keep threatening my friends in New Orleans that I'm coming soon. So we'll see. That's beautiful, honey. So the next item on the agenda is the Wolf Congress and UN Decade Update. And I'm not sure who's going to, George or Teresa, are you going to share some insights from that Congress and from the decision around the UN Decade by Wolf? George?
Teresa's hand is up.
Go ahead, Mama Teresa.
Well, George, if you could take down the agenda so we can all see each other. The Wolf International, boy, am I a mess. The Wolf International 33rd Triannual Congress was held July 16th through the 24th. It was hosted by the Australia section. And in the best of times, we would have been in Australia. However, because of COVID, it was virtual, and that was really a very good thing because hundreds of people who would not have been able to travel to Australia got to participate. George and I, representing the Black Liberation Caucus, put on a workshop called Equity and Inclusion, Section by Section, to really speak to the work that Wolf International is doing to try to dismantle any vestiges of white supremacy inside Wolf internationally. We're so blessed to have Beatrice Schultes with us because Beatrice is the outgoing regional rep of the Americas. She's based in Costa Rica, and I do want her to say a few words about the Congress, in particularly any unsettled questions from the Congress, like the election. But before Beatrice does that, let me mention that we're in the final 30 months of the UN decade. It is really awful that for 7.5 years in the US, I know not much has been done on the UN decade, which started in January 1 of 2015, and it goes into December 31st of 2024. So we have really, starting tomorrow, 29 months. And so the resolution that was passed was so comprehensive. And I'll just say that the International Secretariat is amazing. They're the staff people for Wolf International, and the Director of Human Rights really strengthened the resolution. So it calls for all the sections around the world to post the resolution to their websites and fully publicize it, and to lift up the demands of the UN decade, which are recognition, justice, and development. So part of what we're struggling about in the US is being recognized as a Black Liberation Caucus. the National Board of WILF US refuses to recognize us. So what Mama Fatima was talking about, creating a safe space for us to exercise our self-determination and to self-organize. The National Board of the US section has said that makes us somehow illegitimate. But we're moving forward. We become unstoppable in this little more than a year that we've been organized as the Black Liberation Caucus. So we led the UN Decade Resolution getting approved, and it was approved, and it was seen as a US section resolution. So the WILF International recognizes the Black Liberation Caucus as being a part of the US section. So I'll just ask Beatrice if she has anything she wants to add. Are you there, Beatrice?
I was muted, sorry, because I have my dog barking outside. Okay, now the fact that this resolution passed is really a premiere in WILF, because as you probably know, we had also decades for the indigenous people, 2 decades in fact, and WILF never even took anything notice of it or mentioned it or whatever. I mentioned that because myself, I recognize myself as an indigenous and Black too, because I have also Black ancestors, both of them. And this is a great win that we were able to have this resolution passed. And it needs to be now, we need to push that the Secretariat really does certain moves about it, and also the sections, no? Because we have Afro-descendant people a little bit throughout the world. Even if you go and look in Germany and some Switzerland, all that there are. My daughter is Swiss because she was born in Switzerland and she's Black. So all the sections need to do better and work on this resolution. Now, about the Congress, I think it was great that we saw so many people, as you said, Teresa, being able to participate. And some I know were even sick and were able to participate. So about the other issues, yeah, maybe that's not the moment now to discuss it.
Oh, we were hoping to get the inside scoop when you sounded like the elections were not settled. And it was announced that the new president of the International Board is Sylvie from Cameroon.
Yes, yeah.
That is true.
Yeah, that is true. And I think the 2 vice presidents also. What happened is that I was two times in the Constitution Committee, and we were really trying to get rid of the election committee and also rid of the slate, because many of us, we thought that it's a really undemocratic practice, which they have done in the past. And I have the history of what happened in Ghana was really very, very bad. So now, from now on, the slate is eliminated in the Constitution. We just have to make sure, and I was checking this morning that the election committee is also eliminated, and when we have all the candidates, that democratic elections take place. Now, what happened is that during this Congress, a slate was presented, and a lot of waves were made in order to preserve the slate, even if elections took place. And the Secretariat personally, some got very personally involved into that. And since we are in a period where complaints are flying around, there are already complaints also about that, which will come to the new IB.
Well, it's good because I think the new IB is more than capable of resolving it. There were 2 shocking things that happened to me. that an elections committee would present a slate. I have been in unions all my life, and the election committee remains neutral. I have never seen where an elections committee presented a slate to say this is who you should vote for. That was bad, awful. And then add insult to injury, uh, an investigation was launched, and the head of the International Secretariat was trying to get delegates to vote for approving an investigation. And people really fought back on that. So what is the state of that so-called investigation, Beatrice?
The issue is that they hired an investigator, but also the IB, we had questions around who hired them and who is the investigator reporting to. So actually one of the ideas is that the IB should have also its own budget in order to hire themselves when such need is. The issue about the complaints is that even IB members, we don't know until today who the people are which have been accused and who the people are who complained or filed complaint against them. They said, oh, it was by phone, and they say it's confidential, and they say some are afraid of repercussions and all that. I mean, we are a women's movement, and I don't think that we function like that, you know?
Oh, yeah, because we have to have total transparency and
Yes,
accountability.
yeah,
and that was definitely missing from that process. Well, I know we have to move the agenda. So
okay, good. That's it then. Thank you.
Dear Daryl, you want to ask people if they have any questions so that we can move on to the last items on the agenda?
Yeah, we can ask if there are any questions, but it would be probably good if folks have any particular questions, if they put them in the chat and we can get them to Beatrice, who can take a moment to review them and respond appropriately, because these things that we're talking about sound like they've got a lot of nuances to them. But if anyone has a burning question you want to ask now, please feel free to do so.
Whoever is speaking, I can't hear them. I can't hear whoever is trying to speak.
So hearing none, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the next meeting and which group will be willing to facilitate the meeting next month.
George, could you put the agenda back up? Wow, we're doing so great on time. It's great to be able to end before 5:30 because we're all busy. But on the next meeting facilitators, we rotate around from branch to branch and we take on the newer branches. Now, Sister Sheila this is her first meeting. So I want to propose to everyone that I and George work with Sister Sheila on her facilitating the next meeting, which I believe will be August 28th. Sister Sheila is an experienced movement person, but George and I will help her understand this is kind of like, in some ways, a standard agenda. We have some things that will be coming up next month, which would be the Palestine Lebanon webinar, and we have some other activities like that. And we always review the BOPA, and we always review the strategy chart. So George, if you could take down the agenda, because it's blocking everybody's faces. And so Sister Sheila, we need to hear from you if you're willing to work with me and George on your doing the facilitation for the meeting next week. It's our newest branch.
Absolutely. I'll be glad.
Love you so much. Well, that question gets settled. And since we have a few minutes left, Daryl, it's 5:21. So do you want, we know when the next meeting is. So did you want to ask anybody if they have any burning things to add or any announcements?
Sure. Are there any announcements or any other additional things that folks would like to share for the good of the body and the work of the caucus?
Sheila is trying to say something.
Yes, you know, I'm still, I guess, fumbling with the question of the status of the International Women Wolf and their feelings about this BLC. What I'm not clear on it. When I spoke with you the other day, I thought I heard it, but what is the status? How are they feeling and why?
Well, it is not the Wolf International. The Wolf International has embraced us,
right,
and actually told us how we can become a separate group. I'm glad you brought that up because we don't want to split from the U.S. section if it can be avoided. But as I understand the bylaws at the international level, because we are being told we're not really a part of the US section, we can form our own group. We would not have any voting rights at the Congress level, but we would be able to interact with Wolf International and other sections, in particularly the sections in Africa. We don't want to go over, we do have a hard stop at 5:30. So Sister Sheila, we could talk more about this, but it's not Wolf International, it's strictly West section. It's the National Board of the US section. Those are the people who are saying we shouldn't exist. So Sister Fatima, please, quickly.
Yes, well, I think that they're ignorant of the times. We've grown up. We don't need people holding our hands for us to have a voice in chorus with the rest of the world. And I was just wondering, were these older people that are running this? Because that was the old tradition that kind of started with the NAACP, really, where, okay, well, we'll let us advocate for you. You don't have sense enough to figure anything out for yourself. Black people have gone way beyond that and we have made all kinds of contributions to this society. Controversial leader Elijah Muhammad once said, when a reporter asked him, they said, oh, well, your organization has so much to contribute to America. You've had so much success. I don't know if we want you to leave. He told, and his response was very intelligent. He said, for 400 years, we have been helping you to build your house. Now it's time for Black people to build their own house. And I just think that the national board doesn't quite get it.
Sister Fatima,
yes,
take your hand down and stop preaching to us, okay? Because we do have a hard stop at 5:30, and we do get your point, and we feel the exact same way. We have our right to self-determination and to self-organize. We are all together on that, and the BLC is unstoppable. So no matter what they say, we keep rolling.
Okay.
They don't tell us what to do. They can't stop us. That's why it's so important that all of us are actually members. So everybody has to pay their dues, which is why we said to Julie, who was here earlier, that we are all members in good standing. We have the Triangle branch, the Fannie Lou Hamer branch, the Philadelphia branch, the Triad branch, the Metro Atlanta branch, the DC, Maryland Virginia branch, and we have the Southern Piedmont branch. These are all the branches that are represented here. So Sister Fatima, time for you to put up. You got to get 10 members in New Orleans to join WILF so we can have the New Orleans branch of WILF. Are you with me on that, Sister?
Yes, I am.
And I know it wouldn't take you more than a minute to get those 10 sisters together.
Well, it may take more than a minute, but I'm certainly going to initiate something, because nobody in New Orleans even knows the WILF exists. So we got some work to do, but I've never been afraid of that.
When we talk again, I'll arrange to mail you the brochures that say join WILF today. That's what I use to sign people up. That's what we use to sign people up in DC on June 17th. So okay. I'll make sure you get a bundle of those.
All right, is there any way that I can know who is a member in New Orleans and the surrounding area? Or is Louisiana devoid of any WILF members? I mean,
well, I think that's the very good question, because my guess is that there are WILF members in New Orleans already. So if you identify yourself as a New Orleans organizer, then the Membership Development Committee chair will get that information for you, and I'll make sure she knows that.
Okay, all right.
So she'll be in contact with you.
Okay.
Pastor Darrell Moak.
We are at the end of our time today. We've got a couple of minutes left, but there's no reason to just to stay, although we love being together. So we will look forward to the meeting next month. In between time, my encouragement is that we find ways to communicate with each other, share with each other, to network together, so that we're not just coming together for these meetings, but time to build in between time. So thank you, Teresa, for the inspiration, and George for the facilitation and leadership that you've given, and all of you for being here. It's a pleasure to meet you. And I do look forward to a time when we can be together and do our work. And the Princess, the youngest member of WILF, soon to be, wants to speak and say hello.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Rita.
Yeah, let's give Rita the last word and a real wave with all of her dogs and animals. We love you, Rita. I'll talk to you before the end of the week. Love you.
Bye.
Love you. Bye-bye.
Bye.